this ain't quite working right. What do you think we need? And we both said coaching, right? So we started looking for somebody out there. You know, there's a lot of different coaches out there. And eventually we stumbled on Profitable Tradie. And it just seemed to be the right fit for us at the right time. We jumped on board. Clarity.
So we are in foundation repair. We lift settled houses with hydraulics, push failing walls back, replace main beams, jack up floors, encapsulate crawl spaces, waterproof basements. Pretty much anything with a slab foundation, a crawl space foundation, or basement foundation we can do and fix. Size of our team, we have 6 technicians, a project manager, 2 sales reps, and an office admin.
Bookkeeper, part-time bookkeeper.
And a part-time bookkeeper, yeah.
About 11 or 12 of us.
Yeah.
This is Josh Harper. I'm Todd Amos. We're both from Northern Indiana. Currently run our business out of Indianapolis. So,
And what are your roles at the moment?
Josh handles most of the sales, marketing, advertising. I'm handling most of the production, logistics, ordering supplies, admin, back office type stuff.
Good stuff. So let's roll back the clocks. You've been here for a bit now. What was life like before you joined the $1 Million Tradie program, and what were you wanting to improve in the business?
The best way to describe it is kind of like when you're drinking a big cup of coffee. You get that jitter and your leg starts moving, like your wheels are spinning, but you're going nowhere. We have a lot of drive. We're not the type that, like, you give us an objective and a strategy, the tactics, and we'll knock it out, but it seems like we were just throwing mud at the wall. We're just trying everything. And because we didn't have a clear path, it was
Chaotic.
it was easy to have shiny object syndrome, where instead of just suffering through, sticking with a plan and dealing with the time it takes to actually get that implemented and running as it's supposed to, something else would come up and be like, let's try that. Let's see what happens, you know? Because we were so eager to just get out of that feeling of, what are we doing?
For me, it was a bit different. It was, throwing mud at the wall, a lot of anxiety. Something a lot of people, Josh knows, a lot of people don't know. I spent 8 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I've dealt with PTSD, anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff. So when we were first in this business, we knew we had something going, but it just wasn't quite working right. We didn't know our numbers. Everything was kind of chaos. And you could kind of feel that black cloak of anxiety or whatnot just kind of smothering you, right? So one of the things Josh and I both had as youngsters were a lot of coaches. He was a wrestler. I was a marksman. So we had a lot of coaches that were on the national and the Olympic level, right? So, and this is one of the advantages that I think Josh and I have had. We've always kind of, when it's an important question that we finally ask, we both seem to have the same answer. So somewhere in there, after right about the first year mark or something, we just said, hey, this ain't quite working right. What do you think we need? And we both said coaching, right? So we started looking for somebody out there. There's a lot of different coaches out there. And eventually we stumbled on Profitable Tradie. And it just seemed to be the right fit for us at the right time. We jumped on board. Clarity, right? Know your numbers. Business isn't necessarily a mystery unless you're, hiding under a rock and you're not seeking out any kind of, if you think you know it all, you probably don't, right? So, we look at the amount we pay you guys as it's not cheap, but in the long run, we're probably going to look back and say the one major deciding factor that allowed us to be, let's say, uber successful was the fact that we were willing to pay you guys for the coaching that we're getting. And then we were also decided to be accountable to Lauren at first, and then to Dr. D, and accountable to each other to make this thing work.
Like that. The black cloud that you were talking about before, like, what was that doing to you?
Oh, it's I mean, I'm not like a psychologist or anything, but when you deal with anxiety, PTSD, a lot of times it's like, I guess it's kind of a fight or flight syndrome, right? So you've got all this stimuli coming in, and you don't quite know how to handle it. So it's like, kind of a, I guess, I call it a black cloak or cloud that kind of closes around you. And, you either fight or you bury your head under a rock, and let yourself, the world do whatever it's going to do with you, right? So that's kind of the way I describe it, So you feel this anxiety, this, and you know where it's going, right? After a while, you know that the anxiety and the PTSD kind of leads to a depressive state, and that kind of leads to negative outcomes. You're not going to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish if you're in that kind of a mind frame, right? So there are ways and tactics and techniques to kind of overcome it. But one of the things is just realization of what's going on, right? And that's where we're both kind of like, okay, once we adapted to profitable tradie, it kind of solved the chaos, right? It took us a minute. It didn't happen overnight. I mean, our numbers didn't really get squared away until about January, right? So, but we started job costing, and that way we both do okay. Even though we don't quite know our numbers yet, we had an accountant working through 2 years of, mud on the wall type stuff. You start to know your numbers. You start to job cost everything, and you can see, okay, I'm still profitable, right? All these projects I'm doing are still making the profit that we should be making, right? So you start to get a sense of clarity, and you start to get a sense of confidence that what you're doing is right and working. And then, the clouds just sort of start to go away, right? Okay. So, and then it starts to become fun after a while. You still deal with employees. We still have hiccups and call somebody and say, what do you think? Here's our 3 options. Here's what we think we should do. Bring them 3 options.
Yeah.
Bring, what you think you should be doing. And then generally Lauren or Dr. D would say, I like that. And then we just go execute, right?
Nice.
And then talk to him 2 weeks later, and we've exercised whatever demons we were trying to exercise, and everything's a little bit better, right? So you just keep incrementally moving the ball forward. So
Good stuff. Let's keep talking about changes. When you think about the biggest changes that you've made since jumping on board, you've talked about, helping them problem solve. You're talking about job costing. What other stuff?
Job costing has allowed us to do a couple things. One, we're starting to sit there and we're like, all right, how can we optimize some of the processes we're doing? And we did a major push for content creation, particularly in YouTube and Facebook. And we started to see, okay, structural jacks and beams, our GP margins are 70% on those. So let's start making a ton of content on that so we can get those leads in. And what it's allowed us to do is now we can just dial in on all the stuff we're really good at, hammer that stuff out. The second piece is doing more and more one-on-ones. And for a minute, we had some issues. We had too many guys. We ended up firing 3 guys. And miraculously, getting rid of them, it was like pulling a nail out of the tire. Our numbers doubled, basically, with our output. And everybody's happier. And during our one-on-ones, everybody was like, we were wondering how long it was going to take you to get rid of that guy. So anybody who says they like firing people is kind of a psycho, right? Like, it's never a fun or easy conversation, but you can make it pretty candid by saying, hey, look, you just got to seek excellence elsewhere. This isn't a right fit. So between job costing, being a little more strict with what we accept, read a lot of books. You can glean a lot from other great leaders from the past. So, like, I'm reading one on Julius Caesar's rise to power. And anytime any little transgression took place, you have to call it out, put a spotlight on it, and let everybody know it's unacceptable right then and there before it turns into something else. Because let's face it, when you start to get overwhelmed, tired, depressed, anxious, you let little things slide because you just start running out of energy and you don't want to tackle all those problems. But if you take the emotion out of it and just say, hey, that's unacceptable. It's not okay to show up 7 minutes late. These meetings are important. We're all waiting on you. I expect you to be here on time next time. And you say that in front of everybody, you start to build that leadership capital because every time you let something like that slide, it's really hard to build it, but every time you let something like that slide, it knocks it down exponentially. People now see that you're not somebody that's serious about decorum and doing things the right way.
100%. You get what you tolerate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Whether it's a relationship or whatever.
Yep.
huge. Any other big changes that you guys have made?
We consolidated our marketing.
Yeah, I would say our business today it looks vastly different than it did a year ago, and we're only like 2 years old. You know, it's not like we're, you know, but we when we initially got involved, we had no money. We just went out and worked our tails off. We had, you know, a Facebook guy out of Australia. We had a a company that did a bunch of Google ads, and they were kind of dispersed around the U.S. or the world. We had another company out of Florida doing, I think, pay-per-click. You know, if we wanted business cards, we went over here. Yard signs, we go over here. We have never stopped. If we hear, you know, an inkling or somebody says, somebody over there is doing something good. If it's a competitor, we'll reach out, say hi. You know, if they've done a good job on it and you see it on a Facebook post, we'll say, hey, that looks great, you know, that kind of stuff. But also, if we hear of somebody doing something that might help us, so we heard about a marketing company that had a lot of experience in our space. So we called them up, set up a meeting, and it turned out that they do everything. It's all in one. They've helped about 30 plus companies that are in the foundation repair industry do the same stuff we're trying to do. They've helped grow companies to 13 or 15 million, you know, that kind of thing. So we know they know the roadmap on the advertising and marketing side. It turned out it was quite a good fit. We were able to release the other individuals that we were working with, and just now we deal with one vendor essentially. And that's kind of on Josh's side of the house, but I've done it with supplies, right? We found the right company that was, they were willing to stock our warehouse on consignment. And as we use it, we pay for it, right? So instead of me calling Josh and saying, hey, I found the manufacturer of vapor barrier, they're out of Texas, you know, I'm going to have to spend 22 grand to get, you know, their minimum order, you know, and that's all out of our pocket. And then that stuff sits there for 8 months as you slowly use it. Well, now here's a company saying, hey, we're going to put $150,000 of stuff that you use daily in your warehouse. You're going to inventory it once every 2 weeks, and then you're going to pay for what you've used. I mean, that's a no-brainer to me to do something like that. We keep the capital in our pocket, right? You know, stuff like that.
If you don't ask, you don't get, by the way.
Yeah. So we have actively sought out connections. What do they say? The size of your net worth is the size of your network, you know, that kind of thing. So we've actively sought out other companies in our industry that we aren't directly competing against. Although all of them that we do directly compete against, we pretty much know somebody at all of them. You know, and we still have we're still on good terms with them. They ping us all the time. Half the time they're looking for they're wondering if we're ready to start hiring, you know, somebody that, you know, they're kind of interested in working for us. We built a really good reputation that way. And I don't know if I totally answered that question or not, but
You have. You're doing well. Yeah. Let's talk about the results. So you've made a bunch of changes.
Yep.
How's that impacted cash flow, time, the black cloak, all of the above?
Okay. He knows all the numbers off the top of his head, basically. Part of some of the things I deal with ever since I spent all that time overseas was my short-term memory is like shot.
We'll forgive you. Don't worry.
So, I mean, I know that I think the first quarter we're like 69%.
69.91% GP
Exactly.
margin last month.
I know I can look it up, right? PT's got plenty of spreadsheets. We've got our P&L squared away. I can find the information. He just retains it. He knows it, you know, off the top of his head. So that question is for Josh.
That's cool. So tell us about the results.
We're going to inject $27,000 in marketing to get the amount of leads we need. If we keep closing at a 36% rate with an average dollar size of sale of a 9,500, we'll hit all of our numbers. Hired a second sales rep. But aside from the numbers, emotionally, it's a lot easier to get amped up and knock it out when you know you're on the path and you're seeing the results on a regular basis and those numbers are checked in, right? So we have a lot of sensors. We get regular reports, and every week or whatever the cadence is, depending on the report, we'll look. So during our deliverables meeting with our PM, hey, walk me through your KPIs. What are our wins? What are our challenges? And then, hey, here's what I want you to work on. We know right away, oh, hey, that's immediate feedback. I need you working on this. Or, hey, we know this is going to take another 3 weeks or 3 months to keep getting better at. So, hey, just stay patient here. I don't expect you to be good. It's okay if you fail. Like, it's okay if you lose me money. Just don't fuck with my reputation, because then I'll be ruthless. I stole that from Warren Buffett or somebody, I don't remember. But it's a great thought, right? But it's easier to just be amped up because you're looking at the numbers and you're like, okay, everything's working, it's working. But you also have to be committed to dealing with the suffering and the pain that takes to get from here to here. Like, don't wish for an easy life, wish for the strength to endure a difficult one. I mean, we chose this lifestyle, right? I think a dangerous thought process is thinking that you want everything to be easy, and eventually someday you'll go to the promised land and there's no more problems. That's unrealistic.
Great advice, man. Awesome. So you talked a bit about money.
Mhm.
How's that transferred into time and relationships?
Sweet.
How's the
mean,
results
yeah.
affected that?
We do whatever we want all the time. I went to Argentina a couple months ago and was climbing mountains and whitewater rafting in Chile, and it was a good time. And I didn't have to worry about, oh crap, am I going to have any money for this? We don't worry about that stuff.
The money's been there. We're not getting rich right yet, that kind of thing. But on my side, I help take care of my parents. My father's an old contractor, concrete contractor, built a bunch of houses. The IRS came after him, and he spent about 35 or 40 years fighting them. So the end of his life, our economic system has kicked him out on his butt, busted, right? So I pretty much pay his mortgage. I pay my mortgage. I make sure mom's, she doesn't like to ask, but, if she needs a couple $100 or something this month, it goes into her bank account. My wife and my stepson are fine. They're taken care of. So although we're not reaping huge financial rewards from our business yet, we can see it down the future. It's only a few months, a year away, and then we're probably not going to be driving Lambos or anything like that, but we'll be much more comfortable financially. We'll get to start reaping some of the rewards for the money and time and effort that we put in and didn't get anything for, the first 6 months, for the first year or whatnot. So.
Hey, you talked about the ability to be able to look after your mum, look after your dad. You're sweet. Like, how does that feel inside that you're able to look after them when the system didn't help?
Exceptional, right? So I've always tried to be, or put myself in a mindset, ask myself questions like, if I'm this guy's employee, what does it take? What does he want to see in an employee? And I would be like, try to be the perfect employee, right? I mean, I went for several years. I didn't do a resume for like 12 or 15 years. I was pulled from job to job to job by people just because of my mindset and my work ethic, right? So, but to be able to be the best son possible, or in my mind, or hopefully in my mother's mind and her heart, my dad, and my dad, he's not going to tell me directly. He never has, right? That's one of the failings we have as men, is we never quite tell our son how proud we are of him or anything like that, right? So it's more, I hear whispers through my mother that my dad says, thank God for Todd, that kind of stuff. So just the ability to know that through diligent effort and study and the right decisions, that you can actually, provide for your whole family very well, it's exceptional. It's awesome.
It's really special, man. No, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
What are some of the mindset shifts that you've had to make through this process to be able to implement what you have?
The most important one is, as you level up, there's a lot of belief system changes that take place, right? Talking to guys like you and Phil and Tony and we pick up the phone and call people all over the country all the time, and it seems to be the same thing. It's as you're leveling up, it's all about, you don't have to be good at the day-to-day stuff. I mean, it's important to know it enough so you can check to see if it's being done right and hiring for it. But the most important piece is now, as a leader, you're the visionary, you're setting the strategy, but most importantly, you're trying to hire A players and provide them with the training and the resources. And ideally, you bring in people that are better than you at executing those things. A players, they like freedom, they like to have autonomy, they like to be able to do things their way. So a lot of times they'll come up to me, and before I always used to have to be the guy with the answer. And I realized I was the bottleneck, because sometimes these guys have really good ideas that I hadn't thought about, especially when they come from other companies that are further along than us. So instead of being like, okay, let's find the answer, sometimes like, I don't know, what do you think? And then it's always just constantly evolving, constantly learning, just constantly trying to get better and improve. And little things too. Every time you see one of your employees, say their name, give them a fist bump. Those little things, those little signs of camaraderie, that's the glue that binds us all together, right? Everybody just wants to be accepted, understood, listened to. So when we're doing our one-on-ones, I always ask them like, hey man, what's one thing I could do to help you out better, to be a better human being? And each person has, some people, they just want to go do their 40 hours a week, make some money, and go home to play with their kids. That's cool. I let them know. I'm like, hey guys, if that's what you want to do, that's cool. Just let me know. Other people want leadership, and I'm like, all right, so where do you want to be? Here's where you're at. Here's my feedback. How do you feel about that? How about this? The next month, we're going to work on how to delegate tasks to people that don't want to do hard stuff, because we do some pretty hard stuff, man. These guys are like covered in mud when they come home and sweaty, and they're in crawl spaces that are 18 inches, 20 inches tall, replacing main beams and jacking up houses and sill plates, and there's stuff falling in their face, and they look like the Predator. You guys remember that? Swear to God, like sometimes they're just like, anyways, we just seek out their feedback a lot. And I feel like so instead of trying to be the guy with the answers, we ask them what they think, and sometimes they're way off base, and we're like, hey dude, come back to the light. That makes no freaking sense. But sometimes they have really good ideas that we didn't think about.
Awesome.
So it's kind of nice.
Great.
For me, it was, I don't have to be liked. I'm sure several people in here are familiar with Robert Kiyosaki, right? So, okay, see a bunch of heads nodding. I can't remember if it's his first book, second book, third book, but he talks about 4 personalities in his business world, or how he assesses them. I doubt it's original from Robert Kiyosaki, but he talks about people either wanting to win, they need to be right, they want to be liked, or they need to be comfortable. The 4 kind of classifications of people. I was a small kid, right? And I think I always wanted to be liked. I went above and beyond to try and be liked. When we started the business, it was kind of like, okay, we'll be one big happy family and everybody will like everybody. That doesn't work. Some of the people that we've had to let go, I mean, they're just takers, right? And I'm not saying anything, I'm not begrudging them. You know, there's all kinds of different personalities, or where a person's at in life. It doesn't mean he's a benefit to you at that time, right? So, and there are people who will, if you just keep putting your hand out and I'll help take care of you, they'll just keep taking and taking and taking. They'll never solve their own problems or their own issues. They'll just keep taking. So I just had to, I don't know if you'd call it, you know, it wasn't that big of a switch for me to flip, being in the military and all that stuff, to go from Mr. Nice Guy to, you know, the NCO that's telling you the way it's going to be, you know, that kind of thing. But there's certain people, you just let them go, just fire them, rip the Band-Aid off, tell them to seek excellence elsewhere. So I think that's one of the biggest mindset shifts I've had to make, was can't be the nice guy all the time. You're not here to be liked. You're here to take care of your family. You're here to build a business. If they want to come along for the ride and they want to be a good employee, they're going to get a good paycheck. They're going to get some bonuses. They're going to have steady employment. They see what Josh and I are doing. We're not afraid to show them our numbers. You know, they see we're going someplace. They've always been treated like mushrooms, you know, kept in the closet and fed a bunch of, you know, that kind of thing. Every other company does it, and here are a couple guys saying this is where we're going. So we've got a solid group of guys that they might come along with us for the next 20 years or whatever, right? or they might be here for 2 or whatever. But I'm not so concerned about being liked, you know.
Great shift, man. So
Yeah,
important.
yeah, and I'll create partnerships with whoever I need to, right? And I really don't care if that guy across town that's a real estate agent likes me or not, right? As long as I'm taking care of him and you know the transaction is mutually beneficial, then it'll continue. But I'm not bending over backwards to try and be the guy everybody likes. I'd rather be the company that everybody respects, the go-to, you know, that kind of thing, but not get taken advantage of.
Ironically, everybody likes him. He's very friendly. We had a guy on our team who was like, he would show up and wouldn't shower, and he had to sit. I'm like, this is a you conversation, buddy. So he's like, hey, yeah, he's very polite and well liked. Still,
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Questions, if you have them, just jump up to one of the mics. All right. Willem, what do you want to know?
You guys mentioned marketing, hiring a marketing team, and you were going to focus a lot on like YouTube and Instagram and whatnot. How did a lot of that content come out? Did they come to you and do that? Did you guys have to film your content to give to? And also, how much content were you producing in order to post?
All right. So the first thing you have to think about when doing content is not being afraid to look stupid. The people that are going to judge you don't matter, and it doesn't have to be perfect. They're not expecting production value, TV value, film. For instance, there's a video that I posted. I shot it. You're not supposed to shoot it with like a selfie, you know, view, but I did. It sounds like I have a lisp because I use my iPhone audio. We sold a $23,000 job from that video. Doesn't have to be good. They just want to know they want to know who you are. Can they trust you? And then eventually they're like, after enough touch points, they're like, oh, hey, I want this. So to answer your question succinctly, we try to do something once a week. There's certain things like you want to introduce yourself, but more importantly, we looked at our job costing, saw what job types, what our customer avatar is. For instance, if they're 55 plus, houses between 150,000 and 350,000. We know what we're looking for. So when we have one of those ideal customers, we make a point to go to that job site and shoot content. And we currently use a company called Story. We send them the content, some B-roll film. We talk a lot about what our branding is like, what messaging we like. They transcribe it, they edit it, they throw it out, and they post it to all of our social media. So short-form content, long-form content, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. A lot of people say that Facebook and Instagram aren't really good at actually bringing in revenue. I have to vehemently disagree. We make 60 to 100K per month just on Facebook. It's really good for branding as well. So it's getting to the point now where we just saturate it. And I saw a video of his today.
Yeah. I've had just the other day, it was the first time this happened to me. I don't get out to a lot of sales calls in the last, say, 3 months, 4 months. Josh has done quite a few, but our salesmen are handling most of the sales stuff now. So, you know, part of Lauren training here, right, is you're stepping up and you're backfilling yourself, right? Figure out what you're doing now. Some of it you shouldn't be doing. Figure out a way to pay for somebody else to do it, and then you take another step up, right? And you just keep replacing yourself. So I haven't got out to a lot of job sites lately, but anybody from the Midwest knows we just got like some ridiculous amount of rain in like 10 days, right? It was 4 inches here, 8 inches over there. And anyway, so some lady was calling. I headed up to her house. Everybody else was busy. Sold a $7,000 project. But David's crew was working 20 minutes away or something like that. So I said, all right, I'm going to go check these guys out. I'm going to go spot check what they're doing, making sure they're doing it correctly and whatnot. I didn't expect to meet the owner, but I could see they were home. So I decided to walk up to the door and knock on it just to tell them who I was and that I was going to, spot check the crew, make sure they were doing all right. And I opened the door and the guy goes, Todd, and I never, I didn't expect it. I never met this guy, never talked to him on the phone.
Famous.
Yeah. And he's like, come in. I was like, dude, my boots are muddy. He's like, I don't care. And he's talking to me like he knows me, right? And I'm caught a little bit off guard. But so we sat down for a few minutes and talked to him about, his crawl spacing company and the contract and everything else. He told me, he's like, I see you, like you're 1 out of 5 videos on Facebook are now you or Josh, coming across my phone type of thing.
Good.
So yeah, so I checked the crawl space eventually and moved on, but it's working. So
Awesome. Some love. 3, 2, 1. Corey.
So early on for us, we had a very unsuccessful partnership arrangement that we had to get rid of. It hurt because it was family. How did you guys get together as partners, and what did you put in place to make this a successful venture with two people coming in kind of from two different places to make that copacetic?
We always talk like it's a marriage. Marriage isn't always 50-50, right? There's some days I come in, I'm like, dude, I had nightmares. I slept like 2 hours and I don't feel good. I am operating at like 10% today, and he'll take on 90. Vice versa, 100, 0, 70, whatever, right? Whatever split you want. And we're big on mental frameworks. Me, I'm a visual person, and so is like 90% of the population. So if you want to imagine two people, there's a string and it's jumbled up, there's a big knot in the middle. If you have one person pulling on one side, the other one pulling on the other, and you want to imagine that the knot is an idea or a problem, if you're pulling away and not working together, what happens to the knot? It gets harder to unravel. However, when you come together and start working on that knot or the problem together, it's a lot easier to unravel. So we make a point of trying to, if we disagree, it's always we disagree on the problem. And then what we try to do is, hey, this is the end goal that we want. We talk about the vision all the time. Like I'll call him on Sunday night at 8 o'clock, much to his wife's dismay. She hates it.
it's all right.
I'm like, hey, you like having nice stuff? We're going to have to do this. Married to the business too. So we just make sure that we constantly check in with each other. I piss him off all the time because I'm always like, and he's always like, so, but for 90% of the time, we don't argue about stuff because we have that same vision in mind. We know where we need to go, and sometimes we got to be real with each other. Like, hey, dude, I need you to step up here because I'm overwhelmed over here, and we just do it.
Now, we haven't officially put anything in, well, I mean, our corporate documents, they're all 50-50. We've got our lawyer already lined up. He's dealing with a couple other things right now, but we've already talked to him about, some people in here have probably dealt with it. There's usually at one point you need to codify some kind of separation agreement or whatever they call it. You want some life insurance in place. So, if I get in a car wreck and die, my wife gets so much to buy the business from him type of thing or whatever. So that's in the works. But really, he was the first person I thought of when the opportunity came my way. I was actually still working for our old company, but they had screwed me over once again, and I was like, all right, I'm done with this place. And then I get a phone call saying, hey, this guy wants a basement looked at. Came through a mutual friend. So he's I was like, I wonder what Josh is doing, So out of all the people I knew, if I was going to get into business with one person, it was going to be him, right? It was either do it on my own or be in business with him. And now in retrospect, considering our competition and everything, that we definitely would not be where we're at today if we were just a standalone individual. We know a lot of single mom and pop shop type things, and they always seem to get stuck somewhere. And I think one of our main benefits is the partnership. And if I've had a bad night, he's usually pulling the wagon. If he's had a bad night or week or whatever, I'm pulling the wagon. So it's worked quite well. It does take a certain level of maturity to say, I'm beholden to that individual. He's my business partner, right? And, if he nixes an idea, then the idea is dead, or whatever, and to just constantly work toward the same goal with that other individual. So, but that's, pretty much where we're at.
You're right. It's like a marriage.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Awesome. Some love. 3, 2, 1.
What type of systems do you guys have in place for quality control?
Checklists.
Checklists. And is that part of your software, or is it a physical checklist? And what do you do when guys are not meeting the standard of your quality control?
Okay, so we use Company Cam. They can upload them directly. It's cool because if they're within a certain distance away, it'll just pop up that project. When we first did it, we had them handwritten out because we were like, hey, there's probably going to be some one-off things that come up every once in a while. Write them down, turn them back in, and we'll revise them as we go. We want your feedback. Once those got fixed, we upload them to Company Cam. Now they have to take a picture to close out that job. Mostly main failure points. And okay, and then so typically we find there's 3 reasons why something goes wrong. Once again, a mental framework. It's either the process, they don't understand the proper steps or the systems in place to do it right. Tactics, the individual skills, they're doing it wrong, or they forgot, or they whatever. Or behavior. So basically what we do, and they do something that's wrong, we call them in and we always want to ask, right? Because if you jump on their ass right away, they get defensive. Hey man, I just want to understand what happened here. Walk me through what happened. You'll be surprised how many times it is something that they just don't understand the process. You got the wrong guy. They're too green for that particular task. And then you realize, oh crap, that's my fault. Now we know we need to train him. Tactics, same thing. You guys have been doing it like that? Why aren't you doing it like this? It's 10 times easier. We have these tools, right? So we always try to discern whether it's a process, a tactic, or if it's a behavior problem. Because if it's a behavior problem, you can't fix that. They got to seek excellence elsewhere. You might give them one chance. Hey, man, what's going on? For some reason, like half our employees are having babies right now. So they're like, all of them are sleeping like 3 hours a night. And we're like, hey, like one guy, he was dragging ass one day, and I was like, hey, man, what happened here? He's like, dude, honestly, I am wrecked right now. We've had a lot of hard projects, and I'm not sleeping well. My baby's crying a lot. And I'm like, okay, I need you to communicate that with me before I start sending you to more and more hard projects. Like, we'll take care of you, dude. We'd give you some easier work for the week. You don't have to be doing the gnarly stuff, but it opens up lines of communication. But yeah, process, tactics, or behavior. We try to figure out which one it is and implement something accordingly.
Killer answer. Some love. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's give these guys a big round of applause, eh? Well done, team. Epic result.